Uh, I'm Bruce Dawson. I'm one of the shepherds here at Oak Crest, and I want to just share something that's very personal with me about when I got so angry at God that I lashed out at him, even went so far as to shake my fist at him. That happened when we lost our oldest son, Gary, at the age of 23, back in 1986. We're doing this with the hope that it will be of some help to someone who has had or may be having these kind of feelings even now, or may have them in the future. And I also realize that in a group this size, there's others who have experienced the loss of a child. And I certainly don't want to imply that our loss is somehow worse than yours. This was not our first experience with the loss of loved ones, far from it. My wife Alice lost her dad as a teenager just a short time before we were married. She lost a brother and a sister just a few years later. And she's the youngest of 8 children and is the only one left of her immediate family. I had a brother named Gary that I was very close to. We had named our son after him. My brother had a terrible accident at the age of 24 and died some 2 months later. Our son Gary was a year old at that time. 4 short years later, I lost my dad, who was my hero and is to this day. We lost him to lung cancer, and he was just 56 years old. Of course, during this time period, we also lost uncles and aunts, and lost a grandmother, cousins. And in each one of these cases, the grief process was very real for all of us. It included anger, but not at God. But this, for us, was different. Gary was always a fun-loving child. He accepted challenges. He got along with everybody. It was just fun to be around. He loved life and lived it to the fullest. But Gary and me had struggled through some difficult times in his teenage years. But at this time, he had been married 2 years to a girl he loved dearly. And he had just completed 3 years of school at OU, and he had been accepted into OU Medical School to study pharmacy. Life was good, and it was getting better. The family had been able to spend time together up in the mountains in Colorado and enjoy each other's company and just family times. And at this time, Gary and our other sons, James, who was still in high school, and Mark, who was 10 years old at the time, we had been doing a little fishing and was planning to do more of it and this kind of thing. And like I said, things were good and getting better. And then it happened. Gary and his wife chose to take a short vacation down to Nassau before school started. Very first night after his wife went to bed, he somehow fell from the 7th floor balcony. He was found early the next morning, still alive. He was put on life support and flown back here, where he died about a week later. During this time, hundreds of people were praying for him. And probably 100 more came by the hospital, if not more. I know the ICU waiting room at what is now Southwest Medical Center was full several times. Sometimes there were people there that we didn't know. Our daughter Connie and Gary's wife were both on staff as nurses at this facility, so it seemed like everyone in the hospital was concerned and pulling for us. Our family physician at the time, who was not part of the team caring for Gary, came by every morning while he was doing his rounds and prayed over him. During all this time, my faith was not tried at all. I knew the scripture said that the prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective. I knew the scripture said that ask and it shall be given. And I knew that there were very many righteous people praying for Gary. I knew that my prayers up to here had been answered in the way I wanted them to be. And so as I said, things were going good. Gary had not yet started back to church, however, and of course I'd been praying for that. So you see, in my heart, I knew that God could lead him and could heal him. I knew. So you see, in my heart, I knew that God could heal him, and I fully expected him to, but he chose not to. And that made me angry. Angry to the point that I went out by our barn to be alone with God and shook my fist at him. and to my surprise, he didn't strike me down. After the aftermath, I was an elder in the church, and the church was going through some difficult times, and there were only 2 elders. So I just went back to doing what I thought needed to be done. I wish I could tell you exactly how to get past something like this, but I can't. Well-meaning people said lots of things. Now, some helped a little, some hurt. I do know that sometimes it's the little things that make the most difference. Something like just a squeeze of the hand at the proper moment can make all the difference. A very dear lady did that for me about 3 months after the funeral. And by the way, she's a member right here at Oak Crest. It's been 27 years, so I doubt if she remembers it, but I do. It made me feel like she truly cared and understood. It's some 3 months later. And so many times in these situations, when that amount of time has gone by, everything's just going on like it never happened, and sometimes seems like people expect you to be able to do the same. But anyway, this made a big difference to me, just a little thing that way that I still remember 27 years later. I also determined to spend a lot more time with my family and will not let very many things interfere with that to this day. I also spent a lot of time in the scripture. I still have the notes from that. Anyway, with time I came to realize that God hurt with me and had blessed our family and many others whose lives Gary touched for 23 years in a tremendous way. I'm not telling this today to say that it's right or wrong to get angry at God, but that it happens. And when it does, we need to know that God is not out to get us. His purpose is to help us, especially when we hurt the most. And He's able. Don't beat yourself up over it. Psalm 118 and verse 9, for me the strength is in my anguish. I cried to the Lord, and He answered by setting me free.
I just turned 17. My senior year in high school was getting ready to start, and life was good. I was king of the world. And then my brother died, and it was horrible. Anyway, my brother was 6.5 years older than me, and I truly looked up to him. I admired him so much. But he taught me a lot of things. He was a great example for me. He was a great example of what to do and what not to do. He really, truly did teach me a lot. But one thing's for sure is he had a very big heart. And I suppose that I learned a lot about love from him. When you're 17 years old, you know everything and you know nothing. And if you ask 17-year-old me what is love, I'm sure I had an answer. I don't know what it was, but I'm sure I had an answer. But I didn't really know what it was until my brother was gone. And I did not know what love was until my brother was gone, and I truly missed him. And due today, it's been almost 30 years. Excuse me. Now, when he died, I was angry. I was very angry. I was angry with him. I was angry with him for doing something stupid like dying. But I was really angry with God, truly. I had told God in my heart and with my mouth that I was through with him. I was done. I told him that as far as he and I were concerned, I was through with him. And but I I saw a lot of pain in my parents. They tried to hide it and support us as best they could, but you can't hide that. And I told God, I said, for the sake of my parents, I'm not going to hurt my parents by leaving you, God, while they're still alive, because that would bring more pain upon them. So for the sake of my parents, I will keep up appearances. But once they were gone, I was through. We were done. Now, again, when you're 17, you think that anybody 50 or older is facing imminent death. So, much to my surprise, they didn't die in the next 4 or 5 years. So, in the meantime, life happened. I went to college. Somehow I got a beautiful girl to agree to marry me. We had a couple of kids, and we just lived our lives. I was still angry. I still carried that anger. I knew it was there. But at some point, I realized that I still had a relationship with God. It was tenuous, but it was there. It wasn't, I had not cut him off. And I began to realize that there was that connection, that we had a relationship. It was no longer full of anger and bitterness, but it didn't happen overnight. It didn't. It was probably my late 20s, so it was probably a good 10 years later before it kind of just dawned on me one day that I didn't have the anger towards God that I'd had before. And a lot of that is due because of that promise I made that I would keep up appearances. Had I cut my relationship off with God right then, I don't know where I would be today. I truly don't. But because I did keep up appearances, if you will, I was able to maintain that relationship with God. And again, my loss wasn't any greater than what other people suffered. As my wife once told me, that if you live long enough, we all have something that makes us cry. So there are other people who have lost siblings, parents, children. We all suffer loss, and it's not a greater loss. The pain is not greater, but it's our pain, and so we feel it deeply. Anybody who has suffered a loss, they feel that pain deeply. I can't feel it the same way they feel it, but they can't feel mine the same way I felt mine. So we all suffer. We can all empathize with each other, but the pain is ours. So if there's a lesson to be learned in all of this, what I hope anybody hearing this will take from it is, don't let go of God, ever. You may be angry. You may not feel like being around him. You may have to just go through the motions. But don't let go of God, because he will never let go of you.